been a year since the US and the entire world watched on in shock as seemingly ordinary citizens stormed the Capitol in Washington. Joe Biden said they had desecrated American democracy. But now, tourists are back, taking pictures, and elected representatives have returned to work. ELAINE LURIA is an elected Democrat from Virginia. Because of COVID, she chose to give a socially distanced interview by video conference. She's a member of a commission investigating the Capitol riots.
It was a very frightening event as far as the imminent danger at that place, but it was also incredibly frightening looking back on it in retrospect, because it was an attempt to disrupt our democratic process. It was an attempted coup that fortunately failed. And I'm a member today of the January 6th committee. We're tasked with investigating the events that happened on January 6th. And I think that it's very, very important that we determine everything that happened that day, everything that led up to the events of that day, and provide recommendations and solutions so that something like that could never happen in the future.
Some in Washington are still worried. But to truly understand what led to the events of the 6th of January last year, it's communities in rural America that might have some answers, such as the little town of Johnstown in Pennsylvania. Jackie KULBACK is a Republican county representative. She organised 2 busloads of local activists, many die-hard Trump fans, to travel to the Capitol.
Oh, I took this picture because he stood out in the crowd. And here again is just the group of Chinese Americans. Here's Iranians for Trump.
Like most Republicans, she believes that the attack on the Capitol building was indefensible, but she denies her group had anything to do with it.
The folks that were going down, we had about 100 people who went down. They were going down no matter what. And at least I had a plan that if anything went bad, that I could get everybody rounded up and get them back into, back into the bus and safely home. I saw some of the people that actually went into the Capitol, because, how could you miss a man with a horn hat and no shirt on in the middle of, in January.
According to KULBACK, the riot was more a protest that went sideways. The Johnstown group had already left when they realised the situation had deteriorated.
When we saw that, I was shocked and very troubled by it. But the thing that was still, to this day, I cannot comprehend why there was no security anywhere to be found. When we actually saw a lot of the Capitol Police heading down to the Capitol, and it was well into the mid-afternoons.
There was no one in the town who would admit to having entered the Capitol building, and for good reason, as it's a federal crime, and almost 700 protesters have been arrested and charged for having done so. Around 15% of them are Army veterans suspected of having coordinated the attack.
Get a taste of something else, and then I would be there just to voice my opinion, to show support for that cause. And that cause was his frustration. The biggest key to that frustration was a lot of people didn't believe Mr. Biden won. They believed Trump won, and they've controlled the numbers.
I don't condone what happened, but I understand how it happened.
Most certainly, yeah.
These 3 men have never really stopped being soldiers. But now that they're no longer serving, they feel more able to express their opinions.
We're all 3 war veterans here, and we know the price of democracy. We have something that is nowhere else in the world. And we can change our government if we want to. It can be done.
How?
Well, legally, it would be done through the voting process. But most people think the Second Amendment has to do with hunting and just simple gun ownership. It's not. The Second Amendment has to do, when they wrote that, they were not allowed to have firearms. The Second Amendment has to do so that the average citizen can defend himself or change a tyrannical government. We are losing our greatness.
When we have professional politicians, they are not there to be just for their community or the state or the federal government. They're there because it's become a lifestyle that they love.
For these American voters, even if their president and hero no longer occupies the White House, their loyalty to the Republican cause is still strong.